Welcome back, everyone, to the VBC Bible Institute and podcast. Yes, it has been a long time. The last episode, the last session of the VBC Bible Institute was January the 13th, 2021. And now here we are, February the 24th. The delay is unacceptable. I take full blame for that. I've just been struggling with what to do. I've been really struggling with what to do. The Bible Institute concept was designed, the VBC Bible Institute podcast and institute was designed with a specific idea in mind. And one of the things I was going to do was this. Hey, I'm going to be trying to take everyone through a journey through the Bible and doing some other courses here in the Bible Institute. And I'm going to utilize some of that to do from the pulpit, right? Because some of this teaching kind of requires people present. It kind of requires people present. And the only problem with doing it that way, okay, good. I wanted to make sure I'm live under the VBC Bible Institute. That would be really bad if this was live under Theology Central. Okay, yes, we're live under the VBC Bible Institute podcast. But I wanted to use some of that teaching, like, okay, I'll use Wednesday night or Sunday school. And I'll have a live audience there, and we can really work through some of these subjects. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and so much has happened that really just, okay, how do I do this? What's the best way to go forward? Now, starting Sunday, here at Victory Baptist Church, we're going to be back to a normal schedule. So that means I can bring some of this kind of teaching back to the pulpit where I have actual people in front of me, which I think some of this teaching demands. So if you've been participating in the VBC Bible Institute up to this point, I apologize for the delay. There's no excuse. But I hope you at least understand what was going on. It was just really like, how do I do this? So we're going to ease back in, and we're in Genesis chapter 13. We're going to ease back into this, and we're going to approach this hopefully in a very interesting way. And this one, you're going to have a small assignment here, nothing too major, but hopefully by you doing the assignment, it will benefit you greatly. All right. And I want to set this up in this way. Now, this is going to be kind of my thesis, and then I'm going to have you kind of work to demonstrate this thesis through using Genesis, and you can use other cross-references as well. Let me give you my thesis. There are two equal and opposite dangers to your Christian life. One is when you face very difficult circumstances. You face something trying, difficult, challenging. There's going to be, that provides its own danger and challenge and temptation to your Christian life. Here's this difficulty. Here's this issue. It may involve the loss of money or a loss of a job or physical harm, or it could just be, there's a great difficulty. It could be a tragedy that hits your life. It could involve so many different things where there's pain, there's difficulty, and there's suffering. And you come against that, and the next thing you know, it's like you're marching along on your Christian life. You're just like doom, taking one step after another, and all of a sudden, boom, that difficulty, and then the next thing you know, you take a massive detour. You're like, nope, going this way. And then you go this direction, and you find your place, and you find yourself in a place you never wanted to be, doing that which you never wanted to do, and you make a mess out of your Christian life, and you have to find yourself to get yourself back on that road. All right? There's one problem. There's one issue. There's one difficulty. There's one danger facing your Christian life. That's the danger of difficulty. All right? Now, I'm sorry, I'm sitting there. I'm trying to take a drink of water while I'm talking. So let me go ahead and do that normally. All right. Yeah, it's bad when you're talking, you almost choke on water. I always do that. I know I need to stop when I'm talking sometimes and just take a drink of water. But I get so excited about the point that I don't want to stop talking, right? But all right, here we go. You ready? So there's two equal and opposite. They're equal because they're both equally dangerous. They're opposite because they're completely different in nature. But there's two equal and opposite dangers facing your Christian life. Two things that can derail your Christian life. One is when you face great difficulty, great danger in front of you. We'll just call it difficulty, all right? The second one is where you face a great time of blessing, and everything seems to be going well. All right. When you face great danger or you face great blessing. I'm going to say blessing and danger. I'm going to use those two words. When you face great difficulty or great blessing. All right. When you're facing times of great difficulty, boom, everything can go wrong. You take a detour. You end up where you never wanted to be, doing that which you never wanted to do, and you got to get back on the road. There can also be times when you hit a period of great blessing. Everything just seems to be going so well. Everything seems to be going so great. That poses its own danger and difficulty to your spiritual life. Sometimes when everything seems to be going so well, sometimes those very blessings can then become the very thing that causes you problem in your Christian life. All right? I want you to really think about that concept. Danger and blessing. Taking another drink of water. Danger and blessing. I want you to ask yourself, I really want you to think about this. And you don't have to write this down for me, but you really should write this down, or at least just meditate on it. How have great danger or great difficulties, caused you great problems in your spiritual life? How have times of great difficulty caused you massive problems in your spiritual life? Identify what the difficulty was and identify what it did to your spiritual life. Then identify, the second one may be more difficult. Identify whether you had times of what we'll call great blessing. Just everything was going great in your life. Job was going great. Things were going good with your wife. Things were going with your kids. Things were going great financially. And somehow all the things that were going great, all the great blessings that were in your life literally become the very thing that derails your Christian life. And then you find yourself in a place you never wanted to be, doing that which you never wanted to do. And right now in Genesis, we're looking at the life of Abram. Abram at times faces times of great difficulty, and sometimes he finds himself in times of great blessing. And what we're seeing between Genesis 12 and Genesis 13 is both situations presented great danger and problems for his spiritual life and for his moving forward and obeying God. Let me give you an example, right? Let's see if I can. There, I'm just trying to lay out the thesis. I know it's not very well stated, but I'm trying to flesh it out, all right? But let me try to show you in the text, all right? Okay, here's Genesis chapter 12. Here's Genesis chapter 12. And Abram, starting in verse 9, and Abram journeyed, going on still towards the south. And there was a famine in the land, and stop right there. There was a famine in the land. There's the great difficulty, a famine in the land. Now, you read that, you can read by, and I almost did it as well. I almost made the same mistake that we all made. And there was a famine in the land, and then Abram went down into Egypt. We just read past that like it's no big deal. There's a famine in the land. All right, that's a difficulty. A famine means starvation, means great danger. That's a difficulty. And so he faces this great difficulty, and what does he do? He takes a detour, and he goes to Egypt. Now, should he have gone to Egypt? Is it right to go to Egypt? Is it wrong? You can draw your own conclusion from the text, but that danger, that difficulty, creates a detour. But there's another difficulty facing him. He's got the difficulty of the famine. He's got another difficulty. Genesis 12:9. There was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they will say, This is his wife. They will kill me, but they will save thee alive. He's got two difficulties, a famine and the difficulty that he's got a very pretty wife that's going to end up getting him killed. Two difficulties, a famine, and I know I'm saying that somewhat in a joking manner, but he's got a pretty wife. No, we'll put it this way. We'll just say it in a more serious way. He's got the danger of famine, and he has the danger of the possible loss of life as a result of being killed. All right. So the danger of famine and the danger of a threat to his life by other people. Or we'll say this, a danger of famine, which could lead to the loss of life, and the danger of hostility by other people. Let's say it that way. I think that's very fair, don't you? I think that's very fair. Now, we can say it in a joking way, but I want this to be very serious here, okay? Sometimes it's fine to throw in a little humor, but I want you to really get this, because this is a very important thesis, all right? So this is a difficulty, two difficulties. What are the difficulties? Famine and the hostility of other people that could result in the end of his life. Hostility and famine. And he ends up, he detours into Egypt. And then what ultimately happens? Well, he comes up with a great idea, right? He comes up with this great idea. Say, Genesis 12:13, say, I pray thee, that thou art my sister. You are my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. All right. So I want you to just see that his solution to the famine was Egypt. His solution to the hostility was lying. Famine, detour. Famine equaled detour. Hostility equaled lying. These difficulties presented him a challenge, and we know he goes and lies. And this lying leads to some major problems, does it not? And it came to pass when Abram was coming to Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commanded her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep, oxen, asses, manservants, maidservants. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abraham and said, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? His lying creates major problems. He ends up in a place doing what he never intended to do. He ended up probably in some place he never intended to be. He's supposed to be following God's direction. He ends up in Egypt. Next thing you know, he's lying. Next thing you know, he's got the Pharaoh going, why did you do this to me? He faced two difficulties, a famine and hostility. And what did he do? He detoured and he lied. How does difficulty impact you? What have you done in your spiritual life? Look, if for those who may listen to this, who are in ministry, you're going to be in ministry, if you don't think there's going to be detour, if there's not going to be difficulties in ministry, you're crazy. There's going to be times of great difficulty in your ministry. Sometimes it may feel like a famine. Sometimes it may feel like hostility towards other people, but you're going to find times of great difficulty in ministry. And sometimes you're going to end up taking a detour, and you're going to find your place in a place you never wanted to be, and you're going to find yourself doing something you never wanted to do, and you got to find a way to get back on that road. All right? And we could talk a lot about that, but you can listen to my teaching on the Christian in complete armor under the Theology Central podcast, and you can hear me talk about battlefield medicine. That's a whole different, we need a whole course on that, but we'll talk about that later, right? But just note that. Now, so there's that one danger waiting for you in your Christian life is difficulty. The equal and opposite danger is blessing. The equal and opposite danger is blessing. Let's see how that plays out. All right, there we go. Had to cough. All right, here we go. Got to put my glasses back on. I get so excited. I take my glasses off. I'm ready to start preaching. All right, here we go. All right, so look what happens. This is crazy. All right, so Pharaoh commanded him at the end of Genesis 12:20. Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him and his wife. They sent him away, his wife, and all that he had. Now look at chapter 13, verse 1. All right. As Abraham went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. So just remember, Lot is with him. They all come up out of Egypt. They just faced great difficulty. Now they come up out of Egypt. So they're leaving those difficulties behind. They're leaving all of those difficulties. Look at verse 2. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. All right. He comes back with great material wealth. Hang on, I'm look here. Hang on. Okay, I was looking at something else, but just please note, he comes up in a time with all of this material wealth. All this material wealth. We'll call this a time of we'll say this is a sign of great blessing, or we'll call it great blessing. I mean, he's got all of this material wealth. So he now comes back. The famine seems to be gone. the hostility seems to be gone, and Abraham comes out in a sense better than he went in. He comes out, it seems, with more things than he went in with. He comes out better off than he went in. Now, here's what I want you to do. We can see the difficulty and we see what it led to. What do all of these blessings cause in Abraham's life? I'm going to argue that many of the blessings that he now has going on is going to do nothing but create problems. It's going to create problems. I'm going to give you some text to look at, all right? I'm going to give you some text. I'm not going to give you all of my teaching here because I want you to find this for yourself, all right? I want you to see this for yourself, all right? Let's see. What scriptures do I want to give you? All right. Okay, here we go. Let's see here. I want to give you a number of scriptures. I've got to be very careful how I give this away. Let's do this. So you see all of the material wealth he takes out of Egypt in Genesis 13. We can all see that, right? He went up, and Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and in gold. He went on his journey from south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abraham called unto the name of the Lord. Now let's stop right there. Okay, now, what I want you to see, he now, in a sense, in a time of blessing. He's going back to the tent. He's going back to the altar. We could get into a big discussion about that. We will at a later time. But what I want you to see here is now it's going to be a time of blessing. What do these blessings cause? I'm going to argue that the blessings become a source of problems in his spiritual life. All right. The first one that he's going to have is going to be found in Genesis 13, 5 through 6. I'm not going to read it for you. Genesis chapter 13, verses 5 through 6. All right. Genesis 13, 5 through 6. All right. Next, if you look carefully at Genesis 13, 10 through 11, you're going to see it. Now, remember, Lot comes with him out of here. He was in Egypt. Is it possible that what he saw in Egypt, because if you go back to Genesis chapter 12, if you go back to Genesis chapter 12, we see in verse 15 that the princess also of Pharaoh saw her and commanded her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house, and he entreated Abraham well for her sake, and he had sheep, oxen, asses, manservants, maidservants, and she-asses, and camels. All right, so the Pharaoh has all of these things. So Lot goes with Abraham into Egypt, and he sees all of this wealth. He sees all of these things. Does this possibly begin to shape the way Lot sees things as moving forward? The way he makes certain decisions is now based off material wealth. Okay, so let's go through these again, all right? So I want you to see the problems these blessings can cause, all right? So look at Genesis 13, 5 through 6. Look at Genesis 13, 10 through 11. Genesis 13, 10 through 11. And then look at Genesis chapter 16, verse 1, because we're going to be introduced there by to someone by the name of Hagar, who was an Egyptian. An Egyptian. Most likely, he got Hagar in Egypt. So, now, what problems does Hagar present to them? All of these things of blessing become the very source of things that cause them problems. All right. And I'm trying to be very careful. I'm trying to say this in a way with not giving it away. There with Hagar, I kind of gave it away, but I'm trying my best not to give this away. And it's very difficult to try to teach without teaching. All right. So Genesis 13, 5 through 6, Genesis 13, 10 through 11. Now 10 through 11, you're going to have to really think about it. I tried to give you a clue there. Lot saw all of that wealth in Egypt. Now he's going to be forced to make a decision, and he seems to make a decision with material gain in mind. All right, just keep that in mind. And then Genesis 16, you have Hagar. So 3 passages that possibly show the dangers that arise out of the blessings that Abraham had. And we'll refer to these blessings as all of this material wealth that he now had. All the difficulty was gone. The hostility, he's not facing hostility. He's not facing famine. Now he's just got a whole lot of stuff, and things seem to be going very well. And next thing you know, all of those things that seem to be going very well lead to their own problems. In your Christian life, you're going to face difficulty. It may be famine, hostility, and you can correlate that with any difficulty that you may face in your life. And that's going to lead you to problems. You may end up taking a detour. You end up lying. Then sometimes you're going to, in your life, you've got all this time of great blessing. And guess what? You may not know it right then, but 6 months down the road, a year down the road, those very things that you saw as a great blessing will now become the very thing that leads you into trouble. I want you to identify what difficulties Abraham finds himself dealing with as a result of those blessings. We see it immediately in Genesis 13. Immediately, he has all of this blessing, and immediately there's a problem. The problem arises from all of the blessing. Immediately, we see Lot making a decision, and it seems like Lot may be making that decision because of all of the material wealth, all of the blessing that he has seen, that he now has a certain way of thinking. And then they get all of the stuff that they bring out of Egypt. Well, one of those things seems to be an Egyptian handmaid. Well, that leads to problems. I want you to identify this. I really want you to do this on paper. This is what I do want you to do. I want you to identify, right? And you can think of other scriptures. I want you to identify the danger or the dangers that come from difficulties. I want you to, and you can use other cross references where someone faces a difficulty and it does great damage to their spiritual life. I'll just give you another example. Peter. He faces the difficulty of possibly being arrested. So when they say, hey, do you know Jesus? He lies, and he lies. He's facing hostility. And what does he do? He lies. Difficulty led to, well, ultimately, a denial. We could go that direction. Think of scripture that shows people facing difficulty and the dangers that pose to their spiritual life. I want you to really think about these. How does danger negatively impact our spiritual life? Because there's certain temptations that arise from facing difficulty. Next thing, I want you to think of those scriptures that show someone who everything seems to be going well for them. It's a time of great blessing, and how the very thing that's blessing them becomes the very source of danger and temptation. And we clearly got Abraham. He's got everything seems to be going well, coming out with all of this material wealth. Next thing you know, problem. Next thing you know, someone in his family is making a decision. You're like, oh boy, I don't know if that was the right decision. Well, why? Is it because of the temptation of the material wealth, and he didn't want to give up any material wealth and wanted to get more of it? And then lastly, next thing you know, hey, this blessing of all these things you have, they have a handmaid from Egypt. How did that work out? That became the very source of temptation. This is a very important concept, and we need to flesh it out together. But I want you to do the work first. So on a piece of paper, you can do it this way. Draw a line right down the middle of the page. On one side, put difficulty. On the other side, put blessing. I've already demonstrated to you how difficulty caused great danger for Abraham or Abram at the time. And I've given you at least where to look. I want you on the other side of the paper to identify how blessing became a danger to Abram. And then somewhere at the bottom of the page, I want you to, and then I want you to find other scriptures that indicate the same lesson. Hey, these people faced difficulty. Here was the danger they faced. Hey, here's the people who faced blessing. Here's the difficulty that led to. And then I want you somewhere, you may have to turn to another page, demonstrate or explain how that has shown up in your life. Now that you don't have to share with me. That can be as private as it can be. I want it to be very specific, okay? You may want to write it down and then throw it away, okay? You may not want to keep it around, but I want you to be very honest. Man, I faced this difficulty in 2002. Boom. I did this. Man, in 2005, everything was going great, but all of the blessings that I had became the very source of temptation and ended up causing me all kinds of problems. Be honest with yourself, because your life is always going to be, at times you're going to be in a season of blessing. Everything's going great, but that could just be setting you up for failure down the road, or you may be in a season of great difficulty, and both seasons have their own unique kinds of temptations that come with it. This is a very important lesson. And some of you may be in a time of difficulty and you're already dealing with those temptations. Some of you right now, you think, man, the life is everything is so good right now. So many blessings. You better be on the lookout, because those very blessings are going to become the very source of temptation down the road. You can almost guarantee it. Look at Israel. Sometimes in times of great blessing, those blessings became the very thing that tempted them and drew them away from God. They stopped relying on God, calling on God, thinking about God, and they began to become idolaters and doing other things. Sometimes the blessing, but then when the blessing was taken away and there was difficulty, many times that difficulty then can lead to discouragement and defection and other problems as well. I want you to see this in Genesis 12 and 13. All right, we'll stop right there. All right, very short lesson today, because I'm not doing any of the teaching. I'm giving it to you. All right, if you have any questions, if you need any help, if you don't quite understand, email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com, and I'll be more than happy to help you with this assignment, because this is a very important one. All right, get to work. I can't wait to see what you come up with. I can't wait to see what other cross-references you come up with, because I'm sitting here thinking of, okay, Abraham, there's the difficulty. Oh, there's Abraham, there's the blessings. Okay, Genesis 13, I can see what happens. Genesis 16, okay, I can see where Abram finds himself in trouble. Okay, now think of other people. I can definitely think of other people in the Bible who faced difficulty. I'm trying to think of other people who find the time of blessing, the blessing itself became a source of temptation. That's the one I'm trying to think of. But you can tell me what you find. We'll do this together, and we'll see what lesson we can learn from it. All right, I'll stop right there. Thank you for listening. Everyone have a great day. God bless. Oh, just I forgot, just in case a new person is listening, email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. All right, God bless.